Thank you, Mary. Our next two presenters this afternoon are Nancy Hernandez and Margaret Dean. Nancy is a learning support specialist at our ACS Doha campus, and Margaret is a grade 2 teacher this year. And they're going to be talking about their project, which is focused on co-teaching reading in grade 2.
Good afternoon. The way that our study came about is last year, as a grade 2 team, we sat down with Nancy, who was our learning support specialist, and we talked about how to best utilize her skills within our classroom during her push-in sessions. We decided to focus our energies on writing last year because that was where we needed the most support as a team. And Nancy decided that we should use the co-teaching model because she had had some training on it and was very passionate about it and wanted to utilize it in our classrooms. After using co-teaching with teaching writing for the entire year last year, we fell in love with it as well and wanted to move on to expand what we were doing in a more measurable way. And that is how we came to our question.
Our expectation was that the students who are receiving intervention would show improvement in all the specified target areas: achievement, engagement, and enjoyment. At ACS Doha International School, we had 4 grade 2 classes that we divided into 2 cohorts. In the fall, 2 classes received 8 weeks of intervention using the co-teaching model, while the other 2 classes were solo-taught classes that were teaching similar lessons. In the spring, the second 2 cohort received the intervention. All classes received similar lessons that were planned collaboratively.
In our literature review, we found that there wasn't a lot of information about co-teaching, especially co-teaching in a general education classroom. Most of the information that we found focused on co-teaching in a learning support classroom with a certified teacher and an assistant. And so that's where our study was going to be different. We also found that in most of the information that they did not collaborate together, and it mainly focused on students with special needs. So the literature did show that co-teaching affects students' report cards and performance in class, but has little impact on standardized test scores, and there was little information that supported one co-teaching model over the other. And so we used this information to help determine how we wanted to approach our action research.
As we stated before, we divided the 4 classes into 2 cohorts. Each cohort was given the same baseline assessment, RAT, MAP, and Reading A to Z reading fluency. The same assessments were given at the end after the first 8-week of intervention, and again at the end of the second 8-week intervention. Since our study does not only focus on academic achievement, but on their overall engagement and enjoyment, we had the students complete electronic reflections after various lessons, and we conducted the reading interview at the end of the first cohort as well as the second.
We used various data points to collect information to determine the impact of co-teaching on the overall student. Many of you are already familiar with the MAP test, and we focused on the reading component of the MAP assessment. And we are currently looking at the various domains to determine which areas focused on what we taught during our co-teaching lessons. The RAT-4 Wide Range Achievement Test is an academic skills assessment which measures reading skills and comprehension. The RAT-4 serves as an excellent initial academic achievement evaluation, re-evaluation, or progress measure for any student.
Reading A to Z was used to measure reading fluency as well as comprehension. We inferred from the student interviews and reflections how they view themselves as readers and gauge their enjoyment in reading. The teacher reflections allowed teachers to share their view of the effectiveness of co-teaching lessons when compared to solo taught lessons. The tuning protocol was used to allow us as a team to look at student work and identify strengths and weaknesses in the lessons that we planned. As you can see, we have collected a great amount of data, and we would like to share some of what we found while conducting our data talks as a team.
Here we have the average growth rate of reading levels of students. We compare the increase of number of reading levels of students in co-taught classes versus students in solo taught classes. This diagram shows the growth of students in co-taught classes was greater than those taught in solo taught classes.
We came to a number of conclusions while analyzing our RAT data. We found that this data as our most reliable because it was administered by one person and the comprehension portion of the assessment is objective. Looking at the data shown, this will give you the snapshot of the effectiveness of the co-teaching on student achievement. The first two classes, classes 1 and 2, received the co-teaching intervention during the first cohort, and the second classes, 3 and 4, received the intervention during the second cohort. As you can see, the rate of growth on the first two classes is greater between the first and the second administration, the red line and the yellow line, and the second set of classes experienced the greatest amount of growth during the second and third intervention, yellow to green line. This aligns with the timing of the intervention.
And there are 6 different co-teaching models that can be used when implementing co-teaching in the classroom. During our study, we focused on 4 of them. As you can see with the team teaching, that was we used that the greatest amount because that's what we used to introduce many of our lessons. You also see with the parallel teaching, which we found was strongly used as a way to ensure that the majority of the students' needs were being met. But we also were able to modify the parallel teaching by using the tiered teaching to meet specific academic needs. So instead of having heterogeneous groups, we had 2 groups based on their ability, and were able to target certain skills in those particular lessons. We utilized station teaching as well as alternative teaching models as well, but we found that the parallel teaching best suited the needs of our students and led to them becoming more independent as we advanced in the intervention.
Looking at the student reflections, we were able to conclude that the students in co-taught classes showed a higher level of engagement when compared to the students in the solo taught classes. We believe that it directly links to the desire of the students in solo taught classes to work in smaller groups as opposed to the co-taught classes who were working in small groups at the time the reflection was given.
We experienced a number of positive outcomes during our research this year. The overall teacher and student engagement and enjoyment was obvious after every co-teaching lesson. During the second cohort, the students who were no longer receiving co-taught lessons expressed their disappointment in not having another teacher in the classroom. The amount of collaboration between colleagues increased as we planned our lessons together. With such a diverse group of students ranging from learning support, ELL, highly able, in addition to general education, we were able to give relevant instruction to all of those varying levels. We also found that this was the best use of our learning support staff.
As with any newly implemented strategy, there are also some challenges that we faced. Even though that we are planning collaboratively, we did find that we need more additional common planning time. We felt that the intervention was just too short. It seemed that as soon as a routine has been established, it was a time to end the intervention. Additionally, We realized that the student reflection questions that we gave were at times misunderstood, and found after asking the students for further information that some of the data that we gathered are not reliable.
That's it.
Due to the positive results of this study, we are going to expand in significant ways. We will include grade 2 and grade 3 in the intervention next school year. We will not just focus on reading. We're going to be moving forward full integration into the program of inquiry. There will be no pull-out for learning support instruction, but we'll be utilizing an inclusion model which is more aligned with the philosophy of PYP instruction. This will allow us more time and to have longer period of intervention. We thank you for your time.